Midnight, October 2020. The world was a ghost town, hollowed out by the pandemic's grip. I was behind the wheel, chasing fares to survive, when my Uber app lit up with a name Derek. That name would haunt me. The city was a graveyard, its pulse flattened by lockdowns. I'd been driving for Uber for 3 months, ever since the retail store I worked at shuttered. No job, no savings, just me and my beat-up sedan prowling the streets for fares. Late nights were my domain. Less traffic, more tips from bar hoppers and insomniacs. But that Friday night, the air felt heavier, like the world was holding its breath. The dashboard clock glowed 12:03 a.m. I'd just dropped off a chatty businessman at a hotel on the edge of town, his cologne still lingering in the back seat. My phone vibrated the Uber app, flashing a new request. Derek, it read. Pick up at a bowling alley, 6 minutes away, part of a strip mall I'd passed 100 times. Nothing strange there. I tapped accept the engine, humming as I pulled onto the empty road. The strip mall was a relic, its neon signs long faded. The bowling alley's windows were dark, the parking lot a sea of cracked asphalt under flickering sodium lights. I slowed to a crawl, scanning for my passenger. Most riders waved or checked their phones, but not this guy. He stood alone under a light post, tall, maybe 6'2", in a gray hoodie and jeans, hands buried in his pockets. His head was bowed, staring at the ground, like he was reading secrets in the pavement. Something about him felt off, like he didn't belong in this moment. I shook it off. Late-night passengers were often weird. I rolled down the window. You? Derek? My voice sounded too loud in the silence. He lifted his head, eyes catching mine for a split second. No smile, no wave, just a slow nod. He moved toward the car, his steps deliberate, and slid into the back seat behind me. The door closed with a soft thud, and the air in the car shifted heavier now, like I'd let something in I couldn't name. I started the trip, the app directing me to an address 20 minutes away, a residential neighborhood I didn't know. This the right place? I asked, glancing at him in the rearview mirror. His face was half-shadowed eyes, fixed straight ahead. Yeah, that's right, he said, his voice low and flat, like he was reading from a script. Not drunk, not high, just empty. I nodded, pulling onto the main road. The silence stretched thick and uncomfortable. Most passengers fiddled with their phones or made small talk, but Derek just sat there, statue still. I caught his reflection again. He wasn't looking out the window or at his hands. He was staring at the back of my head. Feel that weight, that pressure, like his eyes are boring into you. My skin prickled, but I told myself it was nothing. Just a quiet guy, maybe tired. I tried to break the ice. Rough night. He didn't answer right away. Then just needed to get out of there. His words hung in the air, vague and heavy, out of where I pressed, half curious, half uneasy. He paused again longer this time. Doesn't matter. His tone shut the conversation down. A door slammed in my face. The city faded behind us. Street lights giving way to dark, winding roads. The GPS led me toward the outskirts, where houses were spaced far apart, swallowed by overgrown yards and looming trees. I'd driven plenty of late-night fares, met all kinds of people, drunks, loners, weirdos, but something about Derek gnawed at me. You ever feel like you're being watched, like someone's peeling back your skin with their gaze? Every time I checked the mirror, his eyes were there unblinking, locked on me. I shifted in my seat, trying to focus on the road. The radio was off, the only sound the hum of the engine and my own shallow breaths. I told myself to relax. He was just a passenger, just a fare. But deep down, a voice whispered that this wasn't normal. This wasn't just another ride. 5 minutes into the drive, I heard a story from another driver. A guy who swore he picked up a passenger who wasn't human. Said the guy's eyes glowed in the dark, like a cat's. I laughed it off then. But now with Derek's stare burning into me, I wasn't so sure. I gripped the wheel tighter, my knuckles whitening. The bowling alley, the dim lights, his silence. It all felt like pieces of a puzzle I didn't want to solve. I glanced at the app again. The destination still 20 minutes out. Too far. Too isolated. My gut churned a warning I couldn't ignore. You're alone with him out here in the dark. What's he planning? I pushed the thought away, but it clung to me heavy as the night outside. Derek hadn't moved, hadn't spoken, but his presence filled the car, a shadow that pressed against my chest. I didn't know it yet, but I'd just stepped into something I'd never escape. 20 minutes from nowhere. I pulled into a driveway that led to a house that didn't belong in the world of the living. No lights, no life, just darkness. And Derek's voice cutting through the silence like a blade. The road to Derek's destination was a tunnel of black, the kind that swallowed your headlights and left you blind. Trees loomed on either side, their branches clawing at the sky, blotting out the stars. The GPS was my only guide, its robotic voice the only sound besides the engine's drone. Derek hadn't spoken since his cryptic "doesn't matter 10 minutes ago," but his silence was louder than words. I kept stealing glances in the rearview mirror, hoping he'd look away, check his phone, do anything human. But he didn't. His eyes stayed fixed on the back of my head, unyielding, like he was reading my thoughts. Feel that chill, that prickle on your neck when you know you're not alone. My hands tightened on the wheel, sweat slicking my palms. I'd driven through sketchy areas before dropped-off passengers in places that screamed trouble. But this was different. This was personal. The app said we were close. 3 minutes out. The houses we passed were sparse, set far back from the road, their windows dark. No street lights. No signs of life. Just me, Derek, and the night. The GPS pinged, directing me to a turn. Almost there, I said more to fill the silence than to inform him. He didn't respond. I turned onto a narrow street, the pavement crumbling under my tires. The address was ahead, a lone house on the right. As we approached, my headlights swept across it, revealing a husk of a building. No lights, no warmth, just a skeleton of wood and peeling paint. The lawn was a jungle of weeds, the driveway cracked and empty. It looked like no one had lived there in years. My stomach twisted. "Is this your place?" I asked, my voice thinner than I wanted. Derek leaned forward, his breath close enough to feel. "Just pull in," he said, pointing to the driveway. His voice was still flat, but there was an edge now, sharp and cold. I hesitated, my foot hovering over the brake. Every instinct screamed to keep driving, to get the hell out of there. But Uber's rules were drilled into me. Follow the app. Don't abandon a ride. I turned into the driveway, the gravel crunching under my tires. The house loomed closer, its windows like empty eyes. I stopped near the front porch and put the car in park. "Everything all right?" I asked, turning slightly to look at him. Derek didn't answer. He stared at the front door, his face unreadable. Then, without a word, he said, "Wait here." He opened the door and stepped out, his boots hitting the ground with a dull thud. I watched as he walked, not toward the front door, but around the side of the house, disappearing into the shadows. Gone, just like that, swallowed by the dark. I sat there, engine idling, the dashboard clock ticking past 12:30 a.m. The ride was still active, the app's timer counting seconds. I didn't know what to do. If I left, I'd risk a complaint, maybe a deactivation. But staying felt wrong, like I was waiting for something terrible. You ever hear about drivers who vanish their cars found empty on back roads? Another driver told me that once over coffee at a 24-hour diner. I'd laughed, called it urban legend. Now it didn't seem so funny. I checked the rearview mirror, half expecting Derek to be standing there, but the back seat was empty. The house was silent, no lights, no movement. 2 minutes passed, then 3. My fingers hovered over the app, ready to end the trip. Just do it. Get out of here. But before I could, a shadow moved at the edge of my vision. Derek was back, walking toward the car, faster. Now, his face twisted in a way I couldn't read. Anger, excitement, something worse. He yanked the door open and slid into the back seat. "Take me to the other place," he said, his voice low but urgent. My heart thudded. "What other place?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Just drive. I'll tell you." I shook my head. "You need to put it in the app." He didn't answer, just stared at me in the mirror, his eyes like voids. You feel that, don't you? That moment when fear takes root, when you know you're not in control? I repeated firmer. "I can't take you anywhere unless it's in the app." Silence. Then, after what felt like forever, he said, "Back where you picked me up." His tone was final, like he was done playing. I didn't argue. I shifted into reverse, my hands shaking, and backed out of the driveway, the house fading into the dark behind us. He was back in my car, but something had changed. Derek wasn't just a passenger anymore. He was a presence, a weight that pressed against my soul. And I was driving him back into the night. The road back to the strip mall was a blur. The world outside. My headlights, a smear of black and gray. Derek's words. "Back where you picked me up," echoed in my head. Each syllable, a nail in my nerves. I didn't want him in my car, didn't want his eyes on me. But here he was, sitting behind me, like a specter I couldn't shake. The app was useless now, the ride technically over, but I hadn't ended it. I couldn't, not with him watching. You ever feel trapped, like the walls are closing in, even in an open space? My car felt like a cage, the air thick with something I couldn't name. I kept my eyes on the road, but his presence was everywhere. His silence, his stare, the faint rustle of his hoodie as he shifted. I tried to focus on driving on the yellow lines, fading under my tires. The bowling alley was 15 minutes away, but it felt like an eternity. I glanced at the rearview mirror, a reflex I couldn't stop. Derek's eyes met mine, unblinking, like he'd been waiting for me to look. My throat tightened. "Rough night," I said, forcing a laugh to break the tension. His lips twitched. Not a smile, but something else. You could say that he replied his voice a low rumble. I swallowed my mouth dry. "Everything all right?" I asked, hating how weak I sounded. He leaned forward slightly, just enough to make my skin crawl. "Not yet." The words were soft, but they hit like a punch. I didn't ask anything else. I didn't want to know. The silence returned heavier. Now, like a fog that choked the air. My mind raced, piecing together the night. The bowling alley, the house, his disappearance, his return. What was he doing at that house? I remembered a story from another driver, a guy who picked up a fare who asked to stop at a cemetery. Said the passenger got out, walked into the fog, and never came back. I'd rolled my eyes then, but now, with Derek's breath audible behind me, I wondered, was he running from something or toward it? My hands shook on the wheel, the road stretching endlessly before me. You're alone with him, and no one knows where you are. The thought was a blade slicing through my calm. I checked the mirror again. His eyes were still there, still watching. 10 minutes into the drive, the strip mall's lights appeared in the distance, faint and flickering. Relief washed over me, but it was fleeting. Derek shifted in his seat, the movement sudden enough to make me flinch. I parked under the same light post where I'd picked him up, the bowling alley's dark windows staring back at us. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but he cut me off. You ever wonder how you're going to die? His voice was calm, almost curious, but it froze me. My heart stopped. My breath caught in my chest. I forced a laugh, high and nervous. Not really something I think about. He didn't laugh. He leaned back, his eyes never leaving mine in the mirror. I think about it all the time. Feel that terror, that moment when you realize you're not safe. My hands gripped the wheel knuckles, white as he opened the door. He didn't get out right away. He stood there, half in, half out, the night, swallowing his silhouette. Then he turned his face, catching the light just enough for me to see his eyes. You picked the wrong guy up tonight. He said each word deliberate, like a promise. The door closed, and he walked into the darkness behind the bowling alley, his figure dissolving as if the night claimed him. I sat there, frozen, my pulse hammering in my ears. He's gone, but you're not free. I didn't move for a full minute, my eyes locked on the spot where he'd vanished. Finally, I put the car in drive, my hands trembling, and sped away, checking the mirrors every second, half expecting him to be there watching. You picked the wrong guy up tonight. Those words followed me, a shadow I couldn't outrun. The strip mall was behind me, but Derek was still with me, his voice echoing in the dark. The road home was a lifeline, each mile a step away from the bowling alley, from Derek, from that house. But no matter how fast I drove, I couldn't escape the weight of his words. You picked the wrong guy up tonight. What did he mean? Was it a threat, a warning, or something worse? My headlights cut through the dark, but they couldn't pierce the fog in my mind. The city was still asleep, its streets empty, but I felt exposed, like eyes were watching from every shadow. I kept checking the rearview mirror, the back seat, the road behind me. Empty, always empty, but the feeling wouldn't leave. You're not alone. Not really. My apartment was 30 minutes away, but the drive felt like hours. The radio stayed off. I couldn't handle noise. Not now. My thoughts were loud enough, replaying the night in a loop. The bowling alley, his stare, the house, his return, his words. You ever wonder how you're going to die? I shivered, the memory of his voice like ice in my veins. I'd driven hundreds of passengers, dealt with drunks, creeps, and weirdos, but none like him. Derek wasn't just strange, he was wrong, like he'd stepped out of a nightmare and into my car. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe he was drunk high or just messing with me. But his eyes, his voice, the way he moved, it wasn't human. You felt it, didn't you? That moment when you knew he wasn't like you. I stopped at a red light, the only car at the intersection. The silence was deafening, broken only by my ragged breaths. I glanced at the passenger seat, where my phone sat, the Uber app still open. The trip details were there, or they should have been. I tapped the screen, my fingers clumsy. The ride was gone. No Derek, no address, no history. Just a blank screen, like it never happened. My stomach dropped. I refreshed the app, thinking it was a glitch. Nothing. I called Uber support, my voice shaking as I explained. The rep was calm, too. Calm, saying sometimes data gets lost if the rider cancels or the app crashes. But I knew better. I'd completed the trip. I'd driven him. He was real. Or was he? Another driver told me about a fare who left something behind, a photo of a family, all dead, their eyes scratched out. He said it was cursed that he saw them in his dreams. I pushed the memory away, but it clung to me, mixing with Derek's face. I started driving again, the light turning green, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. The city was waking up now, a few early risers on the sidewalks, but it didn't feel safe. Nothing did. I kept seeing him in my mind, standing under that light post, walking into the dark. What was he doing at that house? The question gnawed at me, each answer worse than the last. Was he running from something? Hiding? Or was he hunting? I pulled into my apartment complex, the familiar sight doing nothing to calm me. I locked the car, checked the back seat twice, and hurried inside, my keys jangling in my trembling hands. My apartment was small, cramped, but it was mine. I locked the door, slid the chain in place, and sank onto the couch, my phone still in my hand. I opened the app again, desperate for proof. Nothing. No trace of Derek, no record of the ride. But I remembered every detail: his hoodie, his eyes, his voice. You picked the wrong guy up tonight. I closed my eyes, trying to shut him out, but he was there, in the dark, behind my lids, watching. The ride was over. But Derek wasn't gone. He lived in my mind, in the empty app, in every shadow I passed. And I couldn't stop wondering, who was the right guy? Days passed, but the night with Derek didn't fade. It clung to me, a stain I couldn't wash out. I kept driving for Uber. Bills don't stop, even when your nerves are shot. But every ping made my heart race. Every passenger was a potential threat. Every dark street, a reminder of that house, that driveway, that voice. You picked the wrong guy up tonight. I'd wake up at night, sweating. His face burned into my dreams. I'd check the app, hoping the trip would reappear, some proof I wasn't losing it. But it was always blank, a void, where Derek should have been. I contacted Uber again, then again, but their answers were the same data glitch, nothing they could do. I wanted to scream. He was real. I'd felt him, heard him, seen him. Or had I? I started avoiding the strip mall, taking longer routes to steer clear of that bowling alley. But the city felt different now, like it was hiding something. Every flickering light, every empty lot, every silent passenger, it all brought him back. You ever feel like you're being followed, even when you're alone? I'd check my mirrors constantly, half expecting to see him in the back seat. His eyes locked on me. I told another driver about it, a guy who'd been at it for years. He listened, nodding, then said, "Some passengers aren't people. They're something else." I wanted to laugh, to call it nonsense, but I couldn't. Not after Derek. I started researching, digging into local news forums, anything that might explain him. Missing persons, unsolved crimes, weird Uber stories. Nothing matched. But the more I searched, the more I found others. Like me. Drivers who'd picked up passengers, who vanished, whose trips disappeared from the app. One guy swore his passenger left a note, You're next." I didn't want to believe it, but Derek's words kept echoing. Who was the right guy? Was he looking for someone else? Someone he didn't find? Or was I the target, spared by chance? The questions were a maze, each path leading to more fear. I stopped driving at night, sticking to daylight fares. But it didn't help. Derek was with me in the app in my head, in the way I flinched at every notification. I thought about quitting selling the car, leaving the city. But I couldn't afford it. So I kept going, kept driving, kept watching. And every time I passed a dark street, a lonely light, post a house with no lights, I wondered, was he out there, waiting for the right car, or had he already found it? You'll never know, but you'll always feel him watching from the dark. 1:30 a.m. A Saturday in 2021. The city was alive with tourists, but I was burned out chasing fares to survive. Then my Uber app pinged with a name Chris. I thought he'd be a break from the chaos. I was wrong. Summer nights in my city were a circus, tourists flooding bars, music spilling onto sidewalks, and me weaving through it all as an Uber driver. I'd been at it full time since early 2021, trading sleep for cash in a world that never slowed down. Night shifts suited me. Lesser traffic, better. Tips from drunk revelers, and a chance to lose myself in the rhythm of the road. But that Saturday, I was fraying at the edges. I'd just dropped off a group of college kids, their shouts still ringing in my ears, when my phone lit up with a new request. Chris, the app said. Pick up on a side street, just off downtown, a 25-minute ride to a suburban neighborhood. Quiet, straightforward. Exactly what I needed. I tapped accept, exhaling, as I turned the wheel toward the pickup spot. The side street was a forgotten corner of the city, tucked behind an old strip mall that hadn't seen life in years. No bars, no apartments, just shuttered storefronts, and a gravel lot strewn with weeds. The app's pin seemed off. GPS glitches weren't uncommon, but I spotted him before I could question it. A guy stood at the corner, hoodie up, jeans faded, head bowed over his phone. The street light above him buzzed, casting a sickly yellow glow that made his shadow stretch long and thin. Something about him felt like a warning, a ripple in the air you can't explain. I shook it off. Late-night fares were often oddballs. I pulled up, rolling down the window. Chris. My voice cut through the stillness. He nodded, barely looking up, and slid into the back seat. The door closed with a soft thud, and the car felt smaller, the air tighter, like he'd brought something with him. I started the trip, the app guiding me toward the suburbs. "Good night, so far," I asked, glancing at him in the rearview mirror. His face was half hidden by the hoodie, his phone still in his hands, screen dark. No answer. I tried again. Heading home. Silence. He didn't smell like booze or weed, didn't slur or fidget, just sat there, still as stone. You ever meet someone who feels like they're not really there, like they're a ghost in your world? I shrugged it off. Some people didn't talk. I focused on the road, the city's neon fading behind us. But 5 minutes in, I noticed something. Chris's phone was flat on his lap, flashlight on its beam, cutting through the dark, angled slightly toward my seat. Not at me, not exactly, but close enough to make my skin crawl. The light danced on the ceiling, a pale circle that felt like an eye watching me. I forced a chuckle. "Everything okay back there?" My voice was too bright, too casual. He mumbled, "Yeah." And the light flicked off, plunging the car back into shadow. But the tension didn't lift. It grew, coiling in the air like smoke. I gripped the wheel, my knuckles tight, and kept driving. The suburbs were dark, the kind of dark that swallowed streetlights and left you blind. The app said 20 minutes to go, but each second stretched heavy with his silence. You feel it, don't you? That moment when the quiet isn't just quiet, it's something alive, something waiting. I glanced at the mirror again. His hoodie was still up, his hands still on his phone, but he wasn't using it. He was just there, a weight in the back seat, pulling the air out of the car. Another driver once told me about a fare who hummed the same note for an hour, said it was a song from a dream. I laughed then, but now with Chris's silence pressing against me, I wondered. The road stretched on the city, a distant memory. I tried to focus on the GPS, on the hum of the engine, but my mind kept circling back to him. Why the flashlight? Why the silence? Why this street? This house? This night? My gut churned a warning I couldn't name. I'd driven hundreds of fares, met every kind of passenger, but Chris was different. He wasn't just quiet. He was empty, like a shell, with something dark inside. I didn't know it yet, but I was already caught in his orbit, and there was no turning back. The suburbs were a void, no street lights, no life. I pulled up to a house that looked like it had died years ago. Chris didn't move, didn't speak, just sat there, tethered to something I couldn't see. The road to Chris's destination was a black ribbon, winding through a neighborhood that felt like it had been forgotten by time. Trees loomed over the pavement, their branches knitting together, to block the moon. My headlights were the only light cutting a narrow path through the dark. The GPS was my lifeline, its voice a cold monotone, guiding me deeper into the suburbs. Chris hadn't spoken since his mumbled, "Yeah, 15 minutes ago," but his presence was deafening. I kept checking the rearview mirror, hoping for a sign of normalcy. A glance at his phone, a shift in his seat. But he was still his hoodie, a shadow, his hands resting on that dark phone. You ever feel like you're driving into a trap, like the road itself is conspiring against you? My palms were slick with sweat, my heart a steady thud against my ribs. The app said we were close, 5 minutes out. The houses here were far apart, their lawns wild and untamed, their windows black. No street lights, no porch lights, just an endless sea of nothing. I'd driven to rough areas before dropped-off fares in places that made my skin crawl, but this was different. This was personal, like the night itself was watching me. The GPS pinged, directing me to a left turn. Almost there, I said, my voice thinner than I meant. Chris didn't respond. I turned onto a narrow road, the pavement cracked and uneven. The house was ahead, a solitary shape on the left. My headlights swept across it, revealing a husk boards, peeling windows, dark lawn choked with weeds. No light, no life, just a tomb pretending to be a home. My stomach twisted, a knot of dread tightening. Is this the right place? I asked, slowing to a stop at the curb. Silence. Chris didn't move, didn't look at me. I turned in my seat, facing him. Hey, is this it? His eyes were fixed on the house staring past me, through me like he saw something I couldn't. I raised my voice. Chris, is this your place? Finally, a nod, slow and mechanical. I put the car in park, my hands trembling. Have a good night, I said, forcing the words out. He didn't budge. His hands were still on his phone, the flashlight off now, but the memory of its beam lingered a ghost in the car. I tried again. You good? No answer. Then, slowly, he reached for the door handle and stepped out. But he didn't close the door. He stood there, facing the house, the open door a gap that let the night seep in. I sat frozen. The engine idling. The dashboard clock glowing 1:55 a.m. Seconds ticked by, 10:20, then a full minute. The house was a void, its windows swallowing my headlights. You ever hear about drivers who wait too long, who see things they can't unsee? Another driver told me about a fare who walked into a house and never came out, said the place was cursed. I'd scoffed, but now with Chris standing there, I wasn't so sure. My fingers twitched toward the app, ready to end the trip. But before I could, he turned his face, catching the edge of my headlights. "I need to go back," he said, his voice flat, empty. My heart lurched. Back where I asked, my throat dry, where you picked me up. No emotion, no explanation, just those words, heavy as stone. I blinked, trying to process. "That's a 25-minute drive. You need to request a new ride." He didn't move, just stared at me through the open door. "Please," he said softer now, almost pleading. "I need to go back." I shook my head, my voice firmer. "You need to put it in the app." His eyes locked on mine, and for the first time, I saw something fear, maybe, or something worse. "I can't," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "They're not gone yet. Feel that chill, that moment when the world shifts under you." My blood ran cold. "Who's not gone?" I asked, dreading the answer. He didn't respond. His breathing was heavier now, his chest rising and falling like he was fighting something inside. I gripped the wheel, my knuckles white. "Look, I can't start a new ride unless you request it." He stared for another second, then stepped back, closing the door with a soft thud. He walked toward the house, its darkness swallowing him as he reached the porch. Chris was gone, but his words lingered. "They're not gone yet." I thought I'd escaped him, left him at that dead house. But the night wasn't done with me or with him. The road back to downtown was a lifeline, each mile pulling me away from that house, from Chris, from his cryptic plea. My headlights sliced through the dark, but they couldn't cut through the fog in my mind. "They're not gone yet." What did he mean? Who were they? My hands shook on the wheel, the memory of his voice like a splinter under my skin. The suburbs faded behind me, but the tension didn't. It clung to the car, to me, like a shadow I couldn't shake. I kept checking the rearview mirror, half expecting to see him there, his hoodie up, his eyes on me. But the back seat was empty. You ever feel like you've left something behind, but it's still with you, watching? I turned up the heat, trying to chase away the chill, but it was no use. Chris was still here, in the air in my head. I needed a break, something to ground me. A 24-hour gas station was a few blocks away, its neon sign a beacon in the dark. I pulled into the lot, parking near the side of the building. The app showed the trip ended, the fare processed, but it felt unfinished, like I'd left something unresolved. I locked the car, double-checked the doors, and headed inside. The clerk barely looked up as I grabbed a soda and used the bathroom. 4 minutes, maybe 5, and I was back outside, the cold air biting my face. I walked to my car keys in hand, ready to drive home and forget this night. But as I reached the driver's door, my heart stopped. Chris was in the back seat. Same hoodie, same blank expression, sitting there like he'd never left. My brain screamed impossible. I'd locked the doors. I'd watched him walk away. How is he here? I opened the driver's door slowly, keeping my eyes on him through the mirror. My voice was a rasp. How did you get back in? He didn't flinch, didn't blink. Take me back, he said, his tone flat but urgent. My hand went to my phone, my thumb hovering over the emergency call button. I'm calling the cops, I said louder than I meant. He leaned forward, close enough for me to hear his breath, shallow and uneven. They're still in the house, he said, his voice low, trembling. Feel that terror, that moment when you realize you're not in control. I froze my phone, forgotten. Something in his tone stopped me, a crack in his emptiness, a hint of desperation. I lowered my hand, my voice shaking. Whose house is that? He stared at me, his eyes wide, like he was seeing something beyond me. My parents, he said, barely audible. I swallowed my throat dry. You live there. He shook his head, slow and deliberate. Not anymore. My skin prickled, every hair standing on end. I wanted to run, to call for help, but something held me there. He wasn't threatening, not exactly, but he was unraveling his hands, gripping his phone like a lifeline. I forced myself to speak. What's going on? Chris. Who's in the house? He didn't answer, just rocked slightly in his seat, his breathing heavier now. You ever hear about passengers who break, who drag you into their darkness? Another driver told me about a fare who cried for an hour, said her house was haunted. I'd dismissed it, but now with Chris's words echoing, I wasn't so sure. I started the car, my hands trembling, and pulled out of the lot. Every instinct screamed to stop, to get him out, but I didn't know what else to do. Okay, I said, my voice barely steady. I'll take you back. The road to the house was a nightmare, each mile heavier than the last. Chris was silent again, but his rocking grew more pronounced, his breath a ragged rhythm. I kept my eyes on the road, my heart pounding. You're driving into the unknown, and he's pulling you with him. The suburbs closed in the dark, swallowing us whole. I didn't want to go back to that house, didn't want to see it again. But Chris's presence was a chain binding me to his story. I glanced at him in the mirror. His eyes were on the road now, wide and unblinking, like he was waiting for something to appear. The GPS was silent. We were off the app now, just me and him and the night. Back at the house, Chris was a shadow of himself, whispering about they who wouldn't leave. I wanted to flee, but his words held me a puzzle I couldn't escape. The house loomed ahead, its silhouette sharper now, like it had been waiting for us. My headlights caught the same peeling boards, the same dead windows, the same choked lawn. No lights, no life, just a void that seemed to breathe. I parked at the curb, my hands tight on the wheel, my heart a drum in my chest. Chris was still rocking, his breaths short and sharp, his phone clutched in his lap. The car was a pressure cooker, the air thick with his unease. You ever feel like you're standing on the edge of something, and one wrong move will pull you in? I didn't want to be here, didn't want him in my car. But his words, they're still in the house, were a hook, dragging me deeper into his world. I turned to him, my voice low. Chris, what's going on? Who's in there? He didn't look at me, his eyes fixed on the house. His rocking slowed, but his breathing didn't. They're still there, he whispered, so soft I barely heard it. They won't leave, no matter what I do. My blood ran cold. Who are they? I pressed, dreading the answer. He didn't respond, just stared at the house, his face pale in the dashboard's glow. I tried again. Your parents, are they okay? His head snapped toward me, his eyes wide, almost wild. Not anymore, he said, his voice breaking. Feel that moment when you realize you've stepped into someone else's nightmare. My throat tightened, my mind racing. Was he delusional? Dangerous? Or was there something real in that house? Something he couldn't escape? I gripped the wheel, my knuckles white. Chris, I need you to tell me what's happening. He didn't answer, just rocked again, his whispers growing faster, a stream of words I couldn't catch. There, they won't go. I wanted to shake him, to snap him out of it, but his fear was contagious, seeping into me. Another driver told me about a fare who saw things, shadows, that followed him home. Said they weren't human. I pushed the memory away, but it clung to me, mixing with Chris's words. I glanced at the house, its windows like eyes watching us. My skin crawled, every instinct screaming to drive away. But I couldn't. Not yet. Chris, I said, firmer now. I'm not staying here unless you explain. He stopped, rocking, his eyes meeting mine in the mirror. For a moment, he was clear, almost lucid. They're in the house, he said, his voice steady but hollow. They've always been there, My heart sank. "Who?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He didn't answer, just opened the door and stepped out. He didn't close it, just walked toward the house, his steps slow, like he was being pulled. He stopped at the front door, standing there motionless, his silhouette, a dark stain against the house's facade. "You see him, don't you?" Standing there, caught between worlds. I waited, my breath shallow, expecting him to knock, to go inside to do something. But he didn't. He just stood, a statue, in the dark. I sat there for 30 seconds, maybe more, my eyes locked on him. The house was silent, its darkness absolute. My fingers hovered over the app, the trip long since ended. But I couldn't leave. Not yet. You ever feel like you're part of something bigger? Something you can't understand? I started the car, my hands trembling, and pulled away, making sure the doors were locked. I glanced back one last time. Chris was still there, still standing, still staring at the door. The house seemed to lean toward him, like it was claiming him. I turned the corner, the night swallowing them both, but his words stayed with me, a whisper I couldn't shake. Chris was gone, but the house wasn't. It lived in my mind, its windows, watching its secrets, buried with him. And I couldn't stop wondering, who were they? The drive home was a blur, the city's lights a smear against the dark. My hands were steady on the wheel, but inside, I was unraveling. Chris's words, "They're still there, they won't leave," looped in my head, each repetition sharper, heavier. I kept checking the rearview mirror, expecting to see him, his hoodie up, his eyes wide. But the back seat was empty, the car silent, except for the hum of the engine. You ever feel like you've seen something you weren't meant to like? You've crossed a line you can't uncross? I turned on the radio, desperate for noise, but the static only made it worse. I switched it off, the silence rushing back like a tide. My apartment was a sanctuary, but it didn't feel safe. I locked the door, checked it twice, and sank onto the couch, my phone still in my hand. The Uber app was open, the trip details gone like they'd never existed. I refreshed it, hoping for proof, but there was nothing. No Chris, no address, no record. My stomach churned. I called Uber. Support, my voice shaking as I explained. The rep was bored reading from a script. "Sometimes data gets lost," he said. "App crashes. Rider cancels. It happens." I wanted to scream. It wasn't a glitch. Chris was real. His fear was real. Or was it? I hung up my mind, spiraling. Had I imagined it? Misunderstood? But his face, his voice, his words, they were burned into me, as vivid as the house itself. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the building, every shadow on the wall was him, was that house. I kept seeing him standing at the door, frozen, trapped. Another driver told me about a fare who left a drawing in his car, a house with faces in the windows. He burned it, but the dreams didn't stop. I pushed the memory away, but it clung to me, mixing with Chris's whispers. The next day, I reported the ride to Uber again, detailing everything: his flashlight, his plea, his reappearance. They thanked me, said they'd look into it, but I knew they wouldn't. I thought about calling the police, telling them about the house, about Chris. But what could I say? A guy acted weird. Got in my car twice. There was no crime, no evidence, just a story that sounded insane. I stopped driving for a few days, but the bills piled up, and I had no choice. I went back to the road, but I avoided that side street, that strip mall, that suburb. The city felt different now, like it was hiding something. Every quiet passenger, every dark house brought him back. You ever wonder what's behind the doors you pass, what lives in the places you'll never know? I started researching, scouring news sites, forums, anything that might explain him. Missing persons, strange Uber stories, haunted houses. Nothing fit. But the more I looked, the more I found others, like me drivers, who'd seen things, felt things, lost things. One swore his passenger whispered his name, even though he'd never given it. I didn't want to believe it, but Chris's words kept echoing. They're still there. I never saw him again. Never found that house. But it's still with me. Every time I get a ping. Every time I drive past a dark street, I think of him standing at that door, waiting for they who wouldn't leave. Was he sick? Lost in his mind? Or was there something in that house, something real, something still there? I don't know. I'll never know. But I keep driving, keep watching, keep wondering. And somewhere in the dark, that house is waiting, holding its secrets, holding they. Friday evening, 6:00 p.m., alone in my apartment, 8 miles from town. I ordered Uber Eats, expecting a quick meal to fuel my night. But when the app pinged, it wasn't just food that arrived. It was fear. Living alone at 18 was a choice I made for freedom. But it came with shadows. My apartment, a small one-bedroom, perched on the edge of a rural sprawl, was my sanctuary, shared only with my 5-pound Morky Milo. The nearest town was 8 miles away, a stretch of empty fields and winding roads that made delivery a hassle. But Uber Eats was reliable, or so I thought. That Friday, I was elbow deep in cleaning, scrubbing counters and folding laundry to prepare for my boyfriend's weekend visit. Long distance meant we only had weekends, so I wanted everything perfect. The clock ticked past 600 p.m., and my stomach growled loud enough to drown out the TV. I'd just cleaned the kitchen, every dish sparkling, and the last thing I wanted was to mess it up. Uber Eats. It was. I scrolled through the app, picking a burger and fries from a diner I liked. The order went through, and the app pinged. Driver on the way. White Honda Fit Sport. Contactless delivery was my default, living alone, as a young woman made me cautious. I set the instructions to leave the food at the door. No knocks, no interaction. Simple, safe. I went back to cleaning the TV, droning in the background. Milo curled up on the couch. You ever feel like you're in control? Like nothing can touch you? That's how I felt, humming to myself, waiting for my food. The app updated. Your order has been delivered. I jumped up, stomach rumbling, and headed to the door, expecting a paper bag on the mat. But when I opened it, the doorstep was empty. I frowned, stepping outside to check the other doors in my small complex. Nothing. No bag, no food, just the fading light of dusk and the quiet hum of crickets. Something's wrong, isn't it? That moment when the world feels just a little off. I went back inside, pulling up the app to message the driver. Maybe he left it at the wrong building. But before I could type, a knock broke the silence, sharp and unexpected. My heart skipped. I opened the door, and there was my neighbor, a middle-aged guy with kind eyes, holding my food bag. Hey, sorry, he said, his voice low. I grabbed this from your driver. He was looking through your windows, and I didn't know what he was up to. My stomach dropped. Looking through my windows, I echoed, taking the bag. He nodded, glancing toward the parking lot. Yeah, just standing there, peering in. Thought it was weird. I thanked him. My voice shaky, and closed the door. The bag was warm in my hands, but my appetite was gone. You feel it, don't you? That chill, when you realize someone's been watching you. I set the food on the counter, my mind racing. Why was he looking through my windows? What did he want? I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was a mistake, a misunderstanding. I ate the fries, and tasteless, and watched a movie. But the unease lingered. Milo sensed it too. His ears perked, his small body tense. The apartment, once cozy, felt exposed, like the walls were too thin. the windows too open. I didn't know it yet, but that delivery was just the beginning, a crack in my world that would soon shatter. Another girl told me about a delivery driver who left a note with her food saying he'd be back. She laughed it off, but I wasn't laughing now. I checked the app again. The driver's profile blank. No name, no photo. Just a white Honda Fit Sport. I locked the door, double-checked the deadbolt, and tried to focus on the movie. But every shadow outside, every flicker of light, made my heart race. The night was closing in, and something was waiting just beyond my sight. The food was in my hands, but the neighbor's words were in my head. He was looking through your windows. I tried to sleep, but the night felt alive, watching me through every crack. The apartment was too quiet after my neighbor left, the silence heavy with his warning. I stood in the kitchen, the food bag untouched on the counter, my eyes darting to the windows. The blinds were half open, slats casting jagged shadows across the floor. You ever feel like your home isn't yours anymore? Like someone's left a mark you can't erase? I pulled the blinds shut, the plastic rattling in my shaking hands, but it didn't help. The image of the driver, faceless, unknown, peering through my windows, was burned into my mind. Milo paced the living room, his tiny paws clicking on the hardwood, his ears twitching at sounds I couldn't hear. I tried to tell myself it was nothing. Maybe he was just checking the address, confused by the contactless delivery. But my neighbor's face, serious and uneasy, told a different story. I forced myself to eat. Sitting on the couch with the TV on the movie's dialogue a blur. The burger was greasy, the fries soggy, but I chewed mechanically, trying to anchor myself. You know that feeling, when every bite tastes like fear. Milo jumped onto my lap, his small body trembling, and I stroked his fur, whispering reassurances I didn't believe. The clock read 8:00 p.m. The sky outside now fully dark. I got up, checked the front door again, then the back door, then the windows. Everything was locked, but it didn't feel secure. The apartment was small, just a living room, kitchen, bedroom, and bathroom, but it felt too big now, too open. Every corner held a shadow, every window a threat. I took a shower, hoping the hot water would wash away the unease, but it didn't. The steam filled the bathroom, the mirror fogging over, but I kept glancing at the door, half expecting a silhouette. Another girl told me about a delivery guy who called her after dropping off her food, asking if she was alone. She blocked him, but I couldn't block this. I dried off, pulled on pajamas, and went through my bedtime routine, turning off the TV, checking the locks, calling my boyfriend. His voice was warm, familiar, but I didn't tell him about the driver. I didn't want to worry him, not when he was hours away. We talked until my eyes grew heavy, and I crawled into bed, Milo curling up beside me. The apartment was dark, the only light a faint glow from my phone. I drifted off the neighbor's words, fading, but not gone. I woke to Milo's growl, low and guttural, shattering the silence. My eyes snapped open, heart pounding. The room was pitch black, the clock glowing 11:30 p.m. Milo was at the foot of the bed, staring at the bedroom window. His fur bristled, his teeth bared. You feel that terror when your safe place turns against you. I sat up, clutching the sheets, my breath shallow. The window was a black square, the blinds closed, but not airtight. I listened, straining for any sound, but there was nothing, just Milo's growls, sharp and insistent. I whispered his name, trying to calm him, but he didn't stop. Then I heard it, a faint rustle outside, like footsteps in the grass. My blood ran cold. I grabbed my phone, my hands trembling, and checked the app again. The driver's profile was still blank, the delivery marked complete. But the neighbor's words echoed. He was looking through your windows. I slid out of bed, keeping low, and crept to the living room. The front door was locked, the back door secure, but the unease was a weight in my chest. Milo followed his growls quieter, but still there, his eyes fixed on the back door now. I peered through the blinds, the parking lot empty, except for the usual cars. The open field across the street, used for trailers and duiswalks, was a sea of shadows. You ever wonder what's hiding in the dark just beyond your sight? I went back to bed, pulling Milo close, and tried to sleep. But the night felt wrong, like it was holding its breath, waiting for something to break. The banging on my window came at midnight, Milo's barks piercing the dark. I saw the driver's car across the street, and I knew he was in my backyard, watching, waiting. Sleep was a fragile thing, slipping away with every creak of the apartment. I woke again this time to a sound that froze my blood, banging on my bedroom window, sharp and deliberate. Milo went wild, barking, growling, whimpering, his small body shaking with rage. The clock read 12:15 a.m. The room, a void of black. You ever feel like fear is a living thing wrapping around your heart? I couldn't move my body, locked in place, the sheets clutched tight. I pulled them over my head, leaving just enough space to see the window. The blinds were closed, but the banging came again, a heavy thud that rattled the glass. My window didn't lock. It never had a flaw I'd ignored until now. One push, and it would slide open, letting the night in. I grabbed my phone, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. I dialed 911, whispering to the operator, my voice barely audible. "Someone's in my backyard," I said, my eyes fixed on the window. "They're banging on my window, and it doesn't lock." The operator's voice was calm, steady, telling me to move to another room, that police were on the way. I scooped up Milo, his barks muffled against my chest, and ran to the kitchen, my bare feet cold on the floor. I grabbed a knife from the drawer, its weight a small comfort, and crouched by the counter, watching the front door, the back door, the windows. "You're trapped, aren't you? Waiting for the lights, the sirens, the rescue." The apartment was a cage. Every shadow, a threat. Every sound, a promise of danger. I peered through the kitchen blinds, my heart pounding. The parking lot was empty, but across the street, in the open field, I saw it, the white Honda Fit Sport, parked under a dim street light. Its headlights were off its windows, dark, but it was there, unmistakable. "He's in my backyard." The realization hit like a fist, my breath catching in my throat. I clutched the knife tighter, Milo trembling in my arms. The field was empty, no movement, no figure, but I knew. The driver wasn't in his car. He was here behind my apartment, at my window. Another girl told me about a delivery driver who followed her home, watched her through her windows for weeks. She moved, but I couldn't move now. I waited seconds, stretching into eternity, my eyes darting between the windows and the door. Blue and red lights finally flashed outside, cutting through the dark. I heard car doors, voices, the crunch of boots on gravel. I opened the front door, still clutching the knife, and found a female officer, her face serious, but kind. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded, tears streaming down my face, and tried to explain the delivery, the neighbor, the banging the car. My voice broke words, tumbling out in a rush. Another officer headed to the backyard, flashlight in hand, while a third checked the field. Milo was quiet now, pressed against me, his warmth the only thing keeping me grounded. The officer listened, jotting notes, her eyes scanning the apartment. "You feel that, don't you? That moment when you're safe, but not really. The banging had stopped, but the fear hadn't. It was in me, in the air, in the walls." The officers returned, their faces grim. "We found footprints in the backyard," one said. "Muds fresh from last night's rain." My heart sank. Footprints meant he was real. He was there. But where was he now? The officer who checked the field shook his head. The car's empty. No one inside. I started shaking the knife, slipping in my sweaty grip. He's out there, somewhere watching. The officers promised to patrol the area, told me to lock everything, call if anything else happened. I nodded, barely able to speak, and watched them leave their lights fading into the night. The police were gone, but the footprints weren't. They were in my backyard, proof he'd been there, proof he might still be. I wasn't safe, not in my own home. The apartment felt like a stranger's. Now every corner tainted by the night. I stood in the living room, the knife still in my hand. Milo at my feet. The police had left their assurances hollow against the reality of those footprints. Muddy fresh, circling my bedroom window. Someone had been there. Someone who wasn't in the car across the street. You ever feel like your world has been invaded? Like your safety is a lie? I checked the locks again. Front door, back door, windows. My hands trembling with every turn of the deadbolt. The blinds were shut tight, but I could feel eyes out there in the dark watching. Milo paced his ears, perked his small body tense. I wanted to believe it was over, that the police had scared him off, but my gut knew better. I sat on the couch, the knife on my lap, and tried to process. The neighbor's warning, the banging the car, the footprints. It was too much, too real. Another girl told me about a driver who left flowers at her door every night, unsigned, until she found him waiting inside one day. I pushed the thought away, but it clung to me, mixing with the image of that white Honda Fit parked in the field like a predator lying in wait. I looked out the kitchen window. Again, the field empty. Now, the car still there, its windows dark. Where was he? If he wasn't in the car, wasn't with the police, where had he gone? My mind spun each scenario worse than the last. Was he hiding in the field, in the woods behind my apartment, or closer, waiting for the lights to go out? My neighbor knocked again, his face etched with concern. He'd seen the police, heard the commotion. "You okay?" he asked, standing in the doorway. I nodded, but my tears betrayed me. I told him everything, the banging the car, the footprints. He listened, his jaw tight, and told me again about the driver, how he'd lingered by my windows, his face pressed close to the glass. I should have called the cops. Then, he said, guilt in his voice. He offered to let me sleep at his place just for the night, but I declined. I didn't know why. Maybe pride, maybe fear of leaving my own space. You ever cling to your home even when it's not safe anymore? He left, promising to keep an eye out, and I locked the door behind him. I tried to calm down, making tea, turning on every light in the apartment. Milo stayed close, his eyes on the windows, his growls low and constant. The clock read 1:00 a.m., the night stretching endlessly before me. I sat on the couch, the knife beside me, and stared at the front door, waiting for something, anything. The apartment was silent, but it wasn't peaceful. It was the silence of a held breath, of something waiting to strike. You feel that weight, don't you? When every second could bring the end. I checked my phone. The Uber Eats app still open, the driver's profile still blank. I wanted to delete it, to erase this night, but I couldn't. Not yet. I lay down. Milo curled against me, but sleep was impossible. Every sound was him, the wind, the creak of the building, the hum of the fridge. I kept seeing the car, the footprints, the window that didn't lock. He's still out there, isn't he? Watching, waiting, planning. The police had promised to patrol, but the night felt bigger than their promises, bigger than my apartment, bigger than me. I clutched the knife, my eyes on the ceiling, and waited for the dawn, for safety, for something to break the spell of this night. 2:00 a.m. And the banging came again, this time at my front door. The police were there, but so was he, caught in the act, his shadow still haunting my life. The night was a prison, each hour a chain holding me in place. I lay on the couch, the knife in my hand, Milo pressed against my side, his growls a constant hum. The apartment was lit up, every bulb burning, but the light didn't reach the corners, didn't chase away the fear. You ever feel like the dark is alive, like it's waiting for you to blink? I kept checking the windows, the doors, the field across the street. The white Honda Fit was still there, a ghost in the dim street light, its presence a knife in my gut. I'd tried to sleep, to rest, but every sound jolted me awake. The wind, a branch, Milo's sudden barks. The footprints were real, the banging was real, and he was real, somewhere out there, waiting. At 2:00 a.m., the banging came again, this time at the front door, loud and insistent. Milo erupted, his barks sharp, his body shaking. My heart stopped, the knife slipping in my sweaty grip. He's back. I stumbled to the door, my legs weak, and peered through the peephole. Blue and red lights flashed outside, and a woman's voice called, "Police." Open the door. My breath caught relief and fear, crashing together. I opened the door, the female officer from earlier, standing there, her face tense. "We got him," she said. "He was walking up to your door, trying to get in." My knees buckled, my vision blurring. "What?" I whispered, clutching Milo. She explained they'd stayed hidden, watching my apartment, expecting him to return. And he did, caught in the act, his hands on my door, his intentions unknown, but undeniable. You feel that, don't you? That moment when fear becomes real, when the monster is caught. I could barely speak, tears streaming down my face. The officer told me he was arrested, that I didn't have to worry anymore. But the worry was in me, a stain that wouldn't wash out. I thanked her, my voice shaking, and closed the door, locking it tight. The apartment was silent again, but it wasn't safe. Not really. I sank onto the couch, Milo in my lap, and stared at the door, the knife still in my hand. Another girl told me about a driver who was caught, but she never felt safe again, never trusted her own walls. I understood now, the weight of that truth crushing me. I didn't sleep that night or the next. The apartment, once my home, was a battleground. Every window a weak point, every door a threat. I stopped using Uber Eats, deleted the app, swore. I'd never order delivery alone again. But the fear stayed a shadow that followed me. I kept seeing the car, the footprints the moment I opened the door to nothing. You ever wonder if you'll ever feel safe again? If the dark will always hold something? I moved a month later to a new apartment, a new town. But it didn't matter. The driver was gone, locked away. But his presence lingered in every empty field, every dark window, every night I spent alone. I still check the locks, still jump at shadows, still hear Milo's growls in my dreams. The police caught him, but they couldn't catch the fear. It's mine now, a part of me, a reminder that safety is fragile, that the world can slip through your door in a single night. He's gone, but you'll always feel him watching from the dark. Washington, D.C., a city of history and dreams, was supposed to be a perfect escape. Sarah and I wandered its streets, lost in wonder, until a single Uber ride turned our adventure into a nightmare. At 26, I was ready for a change of pace, a break from the grind. Washington, D.C. was that break, a trip to visit my fiancée Sarah for her basic training graduation. It was a big moment for her, a milestone her family would celebrate. But I arrived a week early to steal some time, just for us. The hotel room was our sanctuary, a cozy escape where we laughed and planned our days. Sarah, with her sharp wit and warm smile, was my anchor, and DC was our playground. We decided to explore the city's heart, its monuments and history calling to me. I'd missed the high school trip to DC, so this was my chance to see the Lincoln Memorial, The Washington Monument, the Capitol, the White House, all the places I'd only read about. You ever feel like a place is alive? Its history breathing around you. That's how DC felt vibrant and grand as we stepped into its streets. We spent 4 hours wandering the August sun, warm on our skin, the city buzzing with tourists. The Lincoln Memorial loomed like a temple, its marble steps cool under my feet. Sarah pointed out details, the carved words, the distant view of the Capitol, and I soaked it all in my camera, snapping photos, my heart full. The Washington Monument pierced the sky, a needle against the blue, and the White House stood quiet, its gates a barrier to another world. We walked until our legs ached, our laughter fading into exhaustion. By late afternoon, the heat and the miles caught up with us. My body begged for rest, my mind fuzzy from the day's overload. You know that feeling, when your body's done, but your heart's still racing. Sarah suggested we head back to the hotel, and I nodded, too tired to argue. She pulled out her phone, opening the Uber app. We'd used it that morning. To get here, no issues. Just a quick ride with a chatty driver. This time, she tapped the request. Her fingers quick, her eyes on the screen. 10 minutes, she said, and we sat under a tree, the shade a small relief. I leaned back, closing my eyes, the city's hum fading into a dull roar. The day had been perfect, a memory we'd carry forever. But perfection is fragile, and I didn't know it was about to break. You ever trust something so completely only to find it's a lie? The app pinged, and Sarah stood, waving me over. A gray minivan pulled up, not in a parking spot, but right on the road, its engine idling. "That's us," she said, her voice light. I followed my legs, heavy my mind on the nap, waiting at the hotel. Sarah opened the back door, leaning in. "Uber for Sarah?" she asked. The driver, a shadow in the front seat, gave a slight nod, his face hidden by a cap. No words, no smile. I slid in beside her, the door closing behind us, the air inside cool and stale. The van pulled away, and I settled back my head against the seat, ready to drift. But something felt off, a prickle at the back of my neck. You feel it, don't you? That moment when the world shifts, and you don't know why. The driver was silent, his hands steady on the wheel, his eyes hidden in the rearview mirror. I glanced at Sarah, her face calm, her phone in her lap. I told myself it was nothing, just fatigue playing tricks. But the city outside was moving too fast, the streets unfamiliar, and a voice in my head whispered that we'd made a mistake. Another couple told me about a ride that felt wrong, a driver who took them the long way for no reason. They laughed it off, but I wasn't laughing now. I closed my eyes, trying to shake the unease, but it clung to me, a shadow I couldn't see. The van's engine hummed the air, heavy with silence, and I knew deep down that this wasn't just another ride. The gray minivan carried us away from DC's monuments, but the driver's silence was louder than the city's noise. Sarah and I sat in the back, unaware we'd stepped into the wrong car. The minivan's interior was a world apart from the vibrant streets we'd left behind. The seats were worn, the air thick, with the faint smell of stale coffee and something metallic I couldn't place. Sarah sat beside me, her phone still in her hand, her thumb scrolling absently. I leaned back, my body heavy from the day's walking, my eyes half closed. The driver hadn't spoken, hadn't confirmed our names, hadn't even looked at us beyond that single nod. You ever notice how silence can be heavier than words? How it fills a space with questions I'd ridden with quiet drivers before. But this was different. This wasn't the tired silence of a late-night shift, or the focus of navigating traffic. This was deliberate, a void that pressed against my chest. I glanced at the driver in the rearview mirror, his cap low, his face a shadow. No music, no small talk, just the hum of the engine and the soft squeak of the tires on DC's streets. Sarah seemed unbothered, her head resting against the window, her eyes on the passing buildings. I wanted to say something to break the tension, but exhaustion held my tongue. You know that moment when you feel something's wrong, but can't name it. The streets outside were unfamiliar, not the direct route to our hotel. I told myself it was traffic, a detour, a GPS quirk. But the prickle on my neck grew a warning I couldn't ignore. I shifted in my seat, my hand brushing Sarah's. She looked at me, her smile faint, and I forced one back, not wanting to alarm her. 5 minutes into the ride, Sarah's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, her brow furrowing. I opened my eyes, fully watching her. She didn't speak, just tapped my arm, her touch urgent. You feel that shift when the air turns cold, when you know something's about to break. She held her phone toward me, the Uber app open, showing our route, a clean line to the hotel. But the streets outside didn't match. We were going the wrong way, deeper into the city's edges, where the lights were dimmer, the buildings sparser. Her phone buzzed again. A notification. Your Uber has arrived. My stomach dropped. Another message followed. Where are you from? The driver. Our real driver. Sarah's face drained of color, her eyes wide, meeting mine. The picture on the app. The driver's face didn't match the man in front of us. Another guy told me about a ride where the driver wasn't who he said he was. Took him to an empty lot before letting him go. He said it felt like a warning. My heart pounded, my mind racing. We'd gotten into the wrong car with the wrong man, and now we were moving away from safety. I looked at the driver again, his hands steady, his silence unbroken. He hadn't acknowledged us, hadn't reacted to Sarah's phone. Did he know we knew? My pulse thundered in my ears, my hands clammy. I leaned toward Sarah, keeping my voice low. "We need to get out," I whispered. She nodded, her breath shallow, her eyes flicking to the driver. We were trapped, locked in a moving van with a stranger whose intentions were a black hole. I scanned the van, looking for clues, for anything to ground me. The dashboard was bare, no Uber sticker, no ID. The windows were tinted, the world outside a blur. You're in too deep, aren't you? Caught in a moment you can't undo. I gripped Sarah's hand, her fingers cold against mine. We needed a plan, but fear clouded my thoughts. The driver's silence was a wall, his presence a weight. I didn't know what he wanted, didn't want to know, but I knew we couldn't stay here. The city slid by each street, taking us further from where we belonged, and the truth settled in. This wasn't a mistake. This was something else. The notification on Sarah's phone was a blade cutting through our illusion of safety. We weren't in an Uber. We were in a stranger's van, and every second took us further from escape. The minivan's hum was a trap, lulling us into a false calm as the city blurred outside. Sarah's phone glowed in her hand, the Uber app a lifeline now turned traitor. The notification, "Your Uber has arrived," hung in the air, a death knell. The message from our real driver asking where we were was a punch to my gut. Sarah's eyes met mine, wide with panic, her face pale in the dim light. The driver's photo on the app was a stranger, not the man in the front seat, his cap low, his hands steady on the wheel. You ever realize you're in danger and the world slows down, every detail sharp? My heart pounded, my breath shallow as the truth crashed over me. We were in the wrong car with the wrong man, and we were moving deeper into DC's shadows. I leaned closer to Sarah, my voice a whisper. "That's not our driver." She nodded, her fingers trembling as she clutched her phone. The streets outside were unfamiliar, the lights dim, the buildings low and industrial. We were going the opposite way, from our hotel toward a part of the city I didn't know. You feel that fear, don't you? When you're trapped, with no map, no plan. I glanced at the driver in the rearview mirror. his eyes hidden, his silence a wall. He hadn't spoken, hadn't reacted to our whispers, but I felt him listening, his presence, a pressure in the van. Sarah's hand squeezed mine, her nails digging into my palm. We needed to act, but what could we do? Yell? Jump out? We were moving too fast, the doors locked, the windows tinted. I scanned the van again, searching for anything to anchor me. No Uber sticker, no nameplate, just a bare dashboard and the faint smell of metal and dust. Another couple told me about a ride that went wrong, a driver who locked the doors and laughed when they begged to stop. They got out, but I wasn't sure we would. My mind raced, piecing together the day. We'd been careless tired, from walking eager to get back. Sarah had asked Uber for Sarah, and he'd nodded, but that nod was a lie, a trap we'd walked into. My stomach churned guilt, mixing with fear. I should have checked the app, the car, the driver. But now we were here in a gray minivan with a man who wasn't who he claimed to be. I leaned forward, my voice steady, despite the panic. Hey, we changed our minds. Can you let us out here? The driver didn't respond, didn't even glance at me. His hands stayed on the wheel, the van moving steadily through the darkening streets. You feel that, don't you? When your words fall into a void and you know you're not in control. I tried again, louder. Pull over. We're getting out. Silence. His eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, meeting mine for the first time, cold and unreadable. The look lasted seconds, but felt like years, a silent challenge that froze my blood. Sarah's breath hitched her hand, tightening on mine. The van didn't slow, didn't stop, just kept moving, each second pulling us further from safety. My heart raced, my mind scrambling for a way out. The doors were locked, the driver unresponsive, the city outside a maze. Sarah's phone was our only proof, the real Uber driver's messages, a lifeline we couldn't reach. You're trapped, aren't you? Caught in a moment that could end everything. I felt the weight of my pocket knife, a small blade I carried for camping. Not confrontations. It was a last resort, a desperate move, but we were running out of options. I glanced at Sarah, her eyes pleading, her face a mask of fear. We couldn't wait, couldn't hope for a miracle. We had to act, and we had to act now. The driver ignored us, his silence a threat louder than words. My hand closed around the knife in my pocket, and I knew this was our only way out, or our last stand. The minivan was a cage, its tinted windows trapping us in a world of shadows. The driver's silence was a weapon, his refusal to stop, a chain tightening around us. Sarah's hand was cold in mine, her breaths shallow, her eyes darting between me and the driver. The city outside was a blur, the streets growing darker, the buildings sparse and looming. We were far from the hotel, far from the monuments, far from safety. You ever feel like time is slipping away, like every second could be your last? My heart pounded my pulse, a drum in my ears. The driver's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror again, cold and steady. But he didn't speak, didn't slow. He knew we knew, and that knowledge was a spark ready to ignite. I leaned forward again, my voice sharp. "Pull over now." No response. The van kept moving, the engine's hum, a mocking rhythm. Sarah's phone buzzed again, another message from the real driver, but it was useless now. We were in too deep, caught in a lie that could end us. You feel that panic when you realize you're out of options. My hand slipped into my pocket, fingers closing around the cool metal of my pocket knife. It was small, a 3-inch blade meant for cutting rope, not confronting strangers. But it was all I had. I glanced at Sarah, her eyes wide, her nod barely perceptible. She knew what I was thinking, knew we had no choice. I pulled the knife out, flipping the blade open with a soft click that felt deafening in the silence. "I know you're not our Uber driver," I said, my voice low steady, despite the fear clawing at my chest. "I don't know what you're planning, but I have a knife, and if you don't pull over right now, I'll use it. You feel that, don't you? That moment when you cross a line, when you become someone else." The driver's eyes snapped to the mirror, locking on mine, his face unreadable but tense. I held the knife up, letting it catch the dim light, my hand steady, despite the tremor in my gut. Sarah's breath stopped, her body rigid beside me. For a moment, nothing happened. The van kept moving, the streets sliding by the silence, suffocating. Then a sound, the click of the doors unlocking. The driver slowed, pulling to the side of a quiet street, the van's tires crunching on gravel. Another guy told me about a fake driver who stopped only when he saw a gun, said. The man laughed as he sped away. My heart was in my throat, my grip tight on the knife. Sarah grabbed the door handle, her movements frantic. We didn't wait, didn't speak, just threw the doors open and stumbled out, the night air cold against our skin. The driver didn't look back, didn't say a word. The van's engine roared, and he sped off the taillights, vanishing into the dark. We stood on the sidewalk, Sarah shaking her breath, coming in gas. I pulled her close, the knife still in my hand. my eyes scanning the street. You're free, but you're not safe. Are you? Sarah's phone buzzed again. The real Uber driver asking where we were. She typed a response, her fingers trembling, giving our location. We waited silent, the city's hum, a distant echo. The real driver arrived. Minutes later, his face matching the app, his car a welcome sight. We checked everything, name, license plate wrote, before getting in. He listened as we told him what happened, his face grim. You're lucky, he said. There have been fake drivers around here, targeting tourists. Some didn't make it out. My blood ran cold, the truth heavier than the knife in my pocket. The driver was gone, but his shadow wasn't. We escaped, but DC's streets felt different now, hiding dangers we couldn't unsee. And somewhere, he was still out there. The hotel was a sanctuary, its lights warm against the night, but it couldn't erase what happened. Sarah and I sat in our room, the door locked, the curtains drawn. She was still shaking, her eyes red from tears, her hands clutching a cup of coffee we'd grabbed from the lobby. I sat beside her, the knife on the table, its blade folded, but still a reminder. You ever escape something only to feel it's still with you? My mind replayed the ride, the gray minivan, the driver's silence, the moment I pulled the knife. We'd gotten out. We were safe, but safety felt like a lie. The real Uber driver's words echoed. Some didn't make it out. People had gone missing, taken by fake drivers, their fates unknown. The thought was a weight pressing against my chest. We called the police, our voices shaky as we described the driver, the van, the route. The officer was calm, taking notes, promising to investigate. We'll let you know if we find anything, he said, but his tone was flat, like he'd heard this before. We gave them everything. The gray minivan, the driver's cap, his cold eyes, but it felt futile. You know that feeling, when you've done all you can, but it's not enough. We never heard back. No updates. No arrests. The driver was a ghost slipping through the city's cracks, free to try again. That thought kept me awake, staring at the ceiling. Sarah's breath uneven beside me. The next day, we tried to salvage our trip, but DC wasn't the same. The monuments, once grand, felt like traps, their shadows hiding threats. We stayed close to the hotel, avoiding Ubers, taking taxis. We checked twice. Another couple told me about a fake driver who came back circling their hotel watching. I pushed the story away, but it clung to me, mixing with the memory of the van. Every car on the street, every stranger's glance was him. Sarah was quieter now. Her smile forced her hand always in mine. We didn't talk about it, but we felt it, the fear, the guilt, the what ifs. If we hadn't noticed the root, if I hadn't had the knife, if he hadn't stopped, what then? I started researching, digging into news articles, forums, anything about fake Uber drivers. The stories were there. Tourists' targeted rides, gone wrong, people vanishing. The police knew, the apps knew, but it kept happening. You ever wonder how many dangers hide in plain sight? How many times you've brushed past them? I stopped using rideshare apps after that, and so did Sarah. We warned friends, family, anyone who'd listen. Check the driver, check the car, check everything. But the warning felt hollow, like shouting into a void. He was still out there, somewhere, waiting for the next fare, the next mistake. The trip ended. Sarah's graduation, a blur of forced smiles and tense moments. I flew home, but the fear followed a shadow in every car, every dark street. I still carry the knife. Check my surroundings. Question every ride. The driver was gone, but his presence lingered a reminder that trust is fragile, that one wrong car can change everything. He's out there, isn't he? Waiting for the next one to get in.